welcome Michael.
Thank you and hi everyone. So I'm Michael Chaize, a Flash platform evangelist based in Paris. And I was a Java developer and then a PHP developer, and then I joined Adobe in 2006 to promote the open source framework Flex. And I'm very happy to be here, and I'm very happy to see that there are not so many iPad users. So Adobe Flex. Who has ever tried to develop a Flex application? Please raise your hand. Okay, like 10%. Good. So Flex is an open source and free framework. It has been designed for Java developers, by the way, to produce interfaces, to produce rich internet applications. So it means that you can have this framework to build your screens, and then on your Java side, you can focus on the business logic, you can focus on the data access, and you just expose the services so that your Flex screens can interact with your Java backend. So if we look at the basics, in the SDK, which is free and open source, again, you have two languages, MXML to describe your screens using XML, and ActionScript 3, which is the scripting language very close to Java, object-oriented language with classes that you can extend, so very close to Java. And you have a lot of classes that are provided, open source classes such as visual components, data access classes, and we provide the compiler and the debugger. If you want to have a better coding experience, we also provide the IDE. The name of the IDE is Flash Builder. This is based on Eclipse. This is just an Eclipse plugin. So that you can have the design view, you can have the profiler to profile the memory, the network monitor. So a lot of tools that will help you coding your application. So you use an MVC framework, okay, you structure your code, and at the end when you compile, you obtain a Flash file, a Swift file that you can deploy. And the Flash player is installed on 90% of the desktop computers, Windows, Mac, and Linux. So you can really easily deploy your application, and then you can use very classic ways to interact between the client and the server, using HTTP requests, using SOAP web services, or you can also use the open source Java libraries called data services. So maybe you know Blaze data services, for instance, which is a set of libraries to exchange directly objects between Flex and Java using remoting. And it's very good because you will save 90% of the bandwidth using Blaze data services, and also you will receive typed objects, which is always better when you want to code something. So Flex is very successful, especially with Java. We have a lot of success stories, and I'm just showcasing a typical Flex application developed with a Java backend. So I think that first, it's because more and more users and more customers, they want rich UI. They want to have the richness on the screens. And also I think that Flex is very easy to learn for a Java developer. It should take only 3 or 4 days. And you can be very productive to produce your screens. Also it's open source, so feel free to take all the classes available in the SDK and all the classes developed by the community and extend them. And also you can industrialize your developments with Flex, such as Java projects. So unit testing, you can use continuous integration, agile development. I mean, this is exactly the same. Sonotype, Hudson reports, exactly the same professionalism that you have with Java, you can have it with Flex. And we have a lot of large accounts that are using it, especially in London, by the way. So this is a big success on the desktop, okay, inside the browser. But in 2011, we all know that there is a new challenge. Now we need to develop applications for all these devices. And as an application developers, it brings a lot of new technical challenges. Screen resolutions, screen densities, new operating systems, a very fragmented market, and a lot of methods to deploy these applications. So this is the new challenge also for Flex, for the framework. Because today you have two choices. You can say, okay, I will choose HTML5, and Adobe is a big fan of HTML. We just updated our tools. We just updated Dreamweaver, Illustrator, so that you can produce HTML5 animations. We are one of the biggest jQuery contributor, for instance. And with HTML, you can deploy an application within the browser of the devices. But many times you have users that want native applications, and also they want the best experience, a very rich experience also on the devices. So it means that you will have to opt for this development model, native applications. On iOS, you will have to learn Objective-C, and you will have to buy a Mac, okay, which is something. On Android, you will have to learn the Android SDK. On the BlackBerry Playbook that I have here, so if you want to see the playbook, it's also on the Adobe booth. On the BlackBerry Playbook, this is a totally new operating system called QNX, and so on. So I'm sure that there will be more and more operating systems. It's a very fragmented market, and it won't change. So this is the new goal of Flex, okay? Bring a new abstraction layer for all these operating systems. And using one tool, one language, and one code base, and you will be able to deploy your application on all these screens and new operating systems. So thanks to Flex today, you can target all the browsers, of course. And what is good with Flex is that you don't have to take care of all the testing stuff that you have with JavaScript regarding the browsers, etc. With Flash, you just develop for Flash, for the Flash player. You can also develop applications outside the browser, such as software, desktop applications, thanks to the Adobe Air runtime on Windows, Mac, and Linux. You can now target mobile platforms, so Android, iOS, and the Playbook. And we are working on interactive TVs. So the next generation of Samsung televisions will directly embed Flash and Adobe Air so that you can run your Flex applications. And Flash is also inside Google TV. So what is Adobe Air? Adobe Air means Adobe Integrated Runtime. It has been launched in 2007 to first run your Flex application outside the browser. Okay? But now we are porting Air on mobile devices. So every time you want to develop a native app or a mobile application, it will use Adobe Air somewhere. So we also decided to extend the APIs inside Air. So I will detail the APIs. But first, what I want to explain is that you still use the Flex SDK, you still use Flash Builder. You can, of course, say, I want to, you can still deploy a rich intent application. But now you can also say, with the new release of Flash Builder, I want to package my Flex application, thanks to Adobe Air, as a mobile application. So we have added new APIs. Now you can use multi-touch, geolocation. You can access both front and back cameras on your devices. You can access the microphone, the accelerometer. You can display an HTML page inside your project. You also have the open source SQLite database locally. And we have a lot of customers that are using Flex and Air for people who are temporarily disconnected, that are offline. And then, once they are online, you can synchronize the content. You can also use native extensions. So today this is available on the desktop. So you can write your own Java library and directly embed this library inside your Flex app, and then they can communicate. Okay? And we are working on it also for mobile devices. And GPU acceleration, hardware acceleration, of course, for performance stuff.